affirmation today is so beautiful. The healing power of divine life within strengthens and revitalizes me. The healing power of divine life within strengthens and revitalizes me. So let us come into oneness this morning. Let our prayer be one of gratitude for the amazing spiritual journeys that we share together. Strengthened by Spirit, healing within through Spirit. And today let us enter this service relaxed and undefended, softened and resting in the center of our being, knowing all there is within us. So we just lean into the complexities of life, feel the strengthening power, be here for one another, for in truth, I am, we are, you are one with all there is. And so let us repeat our affirmation together to really feel the strengthening and healing power within. The healing power of divine life within strengthens and revitalizes me. And so it is. Amen. you get to hear them on Sundays. Thank you. I love the music, and Barbara, I love what you're doing, and I love what everyone is doing here. I congratulate you on this ministry with Paul, because he brings so many gifts and talents. You have no idea what's in store for you. So just to get it straight, everybody needs to call me Vicki. I go by Victoria as my formal legal name. But please do make it informal, because today I want to share some of myself with you. I want you to be ready with an open heart to hear it. Can you do that?
Yes.
All right. So when Paul asked me to speak, I just thought, well, what should I say? I don't know you. And so you're new to me. You are brand new. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just share about my own life. So how's that?
Sure.
My spiritual journey has been a little bit interesting lately, and so Kathy was right. It has been filled with some mysteries and some complexities, and I just wanted to share with you what I've learned and how each and every one of us can function better when we have a firm groundedness in spirit. You hear me? A firm groundedness in spirit. When we think of God and we say, I am Holy Presence, Holy Spirit, universal life, love, joy, all the attributes and principles of spirit, Allah, Elohim, Buddha consciousness, the I am Christ spirit, we're saying all there is within me. Okay? All there is within you. And as such, you and I are fully led. We're always guided, we're protected, and we're safe whenever we move into divine mind, into that place of the all there is. And so that's really my message today. I just want to make sure that you are get the concept of how this spirit has our backs. Let me give you an example of what it felt to me about someone having my back. During seminary, I was attending the Unity Village Chapel, and so I decided to join. Well, every Sunday, a woman greeted me, and she hugged me, and she welcomed me, and gave me a bulletin. I never knew her name. She never knew my name, but we always recognized one another. So when I joined, she said, may I go up to the platform with you? And I thought, well, what a loving gesture. Please do. So she walked behind me and stood behind me and put her hand on my back. I had chills. I felt such love coming through her that I thought, I want to spread the word. We need to have one another's backs in life, don't we? And we need to know that spirit is that primary source where we can strengthen and revitalize ourselves, and always know we're fully protected and supported. So I want to read you a poem first. And this poem was written by a woman named Mary Howe. And she's meant a lot to me in the last several years. So let me just read it to you, and then we can talk about it. Every day I want to talk with you. And every day something more important calls for my attention. The drugstore, the beauty products, the luggage that I need to buy for the trip. Even now, I can hardly sit here amongst the falling piles of paper and clothing, the garbage trucks outside screeching and banging. The mystics say, you are as close as my breath. Why do I flee from you? My days and nights pour through me. like complaints and become a story I forgot to tell. Help me. Even as I write these words, I am planning to rise from the chair as soon as I finish this sentence. Shall I read it again?
Yeah.
Did we get it? I'll just read a little bit. Every day, I want to speak with you. And every day, something more important calls for my attention. And even amongst all the busyness of life, I can hardly connect with you. Help me. Even now, I write these words. I'm planning to rise up from the chair as soon as I finish this sentence. So what this poem says to me is that yes, it is difficult to stay grounded in spirit when we are so busy. We do something called a push-pull. When we're really having our own adventures, we're pushing spirit away. And then when we are really floundering in life, we're trying to pull spirit to us. Our job is to learn how to be in that place so that our lives do not become unmanageable. So in the last several years, I had a wake-up call about this, and I was wrestling with a decision. You can imagine what I was wrestling with, whether to stay in the ministry with my co-ministry with my husband, Richard. I think some of you have met him before. He's come here. I think he's done a little training with some of you. But in truth, this whole process of making a decision slowed me down, and I realized, well, I am having trouble staying centered in my contemplative practices. And plus, I wasn't listening to the God voices around me. So I'll make a little segue here and tell you a story. And this story is about divine listening. God has many names, a guru told his disciple, and one of these is Brahma. If you see God in everything, then you will be safe wherever you go. So the disciple traveled, and everywhere he went, he recited Ram, Ram, and he felt safe. Well, one day he came to a village, and the villagers said, there is a mad elephant terrorizing this village. And when the villagers warned the disciple that the elephant had been heard nearby, the disciple wasn't concerned. He said, my guru told me that God is in everything, and I will be safe. But the villagers persisted, insisting that it was too dangerous to go outside when the elephant was around. The disciple again said, this elephant is God and I am God, and so why should I be afraid? So he went right out in the street. Immediately the elephant saw him, picked him up, tossed him to the side of the road, just about killing the man. Well, after a long convalescence, the disciple went back to his guru, and he said, I don't understand. You said God is in everything, and I would be safe, and look at me now. Oh, my disciple, replied the guru, you were right to see God in yourself and in the elephant. But why did you fail to recognize God warning you through the voices of the villagers? So here's the relevance of that story. If you haven't figured it out already, here's the relevance of that story to my life. In retrospect, everything that was happening to me indicated God was trying to get my attention. All the intuition that I had, the dreams and the journaling and the insights and the voices around me were all indicating after 10 years, Spirit was saying, am wanting to lead you into something else. Well, I just was not hearing it. I thought I wasn't complete in my setting. But you know, I began to eventually wake up and understand that something was going on here. There's a great law, and that's the law of cause and effect. It was at work, and I had not seen that I was holding on and clinging to the ministry because I just didn't feel like it was time for me to release it. I thought I had things to do, and it didn't dawn on me that I was the cause of my own confusion. Have you ever felt like that in your own lives? It's the great law of work. Well, at the same time, in my meditations, I remembered there is an opposite law, and that's the law of divine grace. And I began to affirm that God in me is greater than any situation. And simultaneously, I was being led to become this certified spiritual director that Kathy mentioned. And as the mystic poet Rumi says, silently drawn by the stronger pull of what I really love. And so it didn't mean I didn't love everyone back in that Unity Center, but it meant that the effect of being pulled by that holy presence was showing up everywhere, and it was strong. Once I surrendered, I will tell you, my joyful nature returned, and I was quickly able to release the ministry in the capable hands of my husband and do the work that I'm called to do. Now, if there's any confusion about doing what is ours to do, see me after this message, because I want to pray with you and encourage you to move on in life as you hit any major decision or confusion. Know that something greater is there waiting for you. The 14th century English mystic, Julian of Norwich, anyone heard of her? She spent her life as an anchoress in the Roman Catholic abbey. And here's what she says, famous quote, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. For there is a force of love moving through the universe that holds us fast and will not let us go. Isn't that beautiful? I felt that force of the universe. I felt that love during that experience. And so it's got me thinking about this divine law and divine grace and how it works in each of our lives. And I'll tell you, I am so grateful for it. Because at a time when I was releasing attachments and expectations, and I was unsure what to do or what was mine to do, when that love swept in, I knew I was safe. I knew in divine mind I would be guided and directed. Now, back in September the 4th of 1932, Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, gave a talk on cause and effect. And he said this, the spiritual mind must become the dominant mind. When the mortal mind dwells in sense consciousness, it is the cause of all the troubles in the world today. And the effect in our thoughts and actions express out as depression, isolation, fear, intolerance, willfulness, violence, warfare, and so on. Do we see that expressing out into our world today? Yes, we do. Example of cause and effect, and the effect of sense consciousness in this world, we could see from the events that happened last week here in the nation's capital, when white protesters and white supremacists were protesting in front of the Capitol. And we also had protesters in Charlottesville. And you know, that day marked the anniversary of the woman named Heather Heyer, who had been fatally injured when a white supremacist rammed his car into a crowd of counter-protesters. So last Sunday, there was a lot of tension. The police did not know what was going to happen. Hate causes more hate. And so that increases it on both sides, the protesters as well as for the police. Could have been angry protests, but the event shut down. It started to rain. It just dwindled in energy, and there was no notable violence. And I did read that in one location, either here in DC or in Charlottesville, ministers and church leaders stepped forward between the crowd and the police to lovingly reduce the tension so there would be no reaction. They brought grace. They brought divine grace to that event. And doesn't it show us that love and compassion are more powerful than hate? So when we look at these laws, we have to understand they're paradoxical. On one side, let's just say a cause and effect is what we reap, we will sow. On the other hand, divine love says it's unconditional. Anyone ever heard of James Dillard Freeman, poet laureate of Unity? He says, for God may be thought of as law, but God is a law that acts like love. And so when we really understand grace is the fulfillment of that law, here's how it plays out, that you and I are sustained and protected in spite of ourselves. What do you think of that? In spite of our forgetfulness to stay grounded in spirit, in spite of our arrogance, our forgetfulness. And it works like a buoyant sea of water. When we're trying to push it down, spirit will always help it float. Doesn't it feel good? We'll never reap the harvest of error. We'll always reap more than what we sow. So let me just quickly say, if you're saying to me in your mind right now, yeah, I heard it all, read all the Unity classics, and been to all the SCE classes that you have available, and I know that God loves me, and I know that the I am within is love, and I am that love. Here's the real question I want to pose to us this morning is how often do we have the same divine consciousness when we hit trouble in a relationship or a situation or a circumstance that begins to get us off balance? You know, Pierre de Chardin, the French Jesuit priest and paleontologist, says, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings, first and foremost, having human experiences. So what we want to do is wake up and grow up. We want to prosper. At Reading Gain says we do it when we do our forgiveness work. We prosper when we do our forgiveness work. And that's how divine grace works. We must be fully engaged in this process. So you may not know this. You might learn the laws and the paradoxes of God, but you may not be fully aware that you and I have to keep ourselves clear. We have to do the inner work. We have to release and let go, regardless of what's going on around us. We need to be vulnerable and forgiving and courageous. Many times that requires speaking up. So if you're not thinking that the Spirit has your back, let me just say, you and I will need it if someone, for instance, criticizes you, says something about you to someone else and it gets back or hurts you. Generally, we do three things. We can be a part of the drama, and we can react, we can blame, we can shame ourselves, and we can try to get divine retribution, or we can go to a spiritual bypass. A spiritual bypass means we just pretend and avoid that we don't get hurt, and no one especially in unity settings, when we're so kind and considerate. We don't want to say anything that would be hurtful, but so we push it down and we repress perhaps what we need to say. So the third thing we can do, and God will have our back in this, because you will be connecting with your I am Christ nature. Within you, it's there. We can come from that place of spiritual being first, acknowledging, yes, there is divine law, but I can be hurt, and I can hurt others, but there is grace. There is unconditional love, and I can take baby steps to make that happen. Forgive ourselves, forgive others, and feel the grace that something more wonderful than we could ever imagine is coming our way. And I want to share with you that was my experience. Something more wonderful was right around the corner. Now, these human experiences can be tough, so let me just share one way to look at it. And this is through the teachings of a woman who's a Buddhist teacher named Tara Brach. You may have heard of Tara, but she tells the story of a dog that is tied to a tree. We go to pet the dog because we see it as a good dog, and it growls and it lunges at us. And so now we see the dog as what? Bad. And so we notice then that the dog's paw is caught in a trap. So we begin to feel compassion and no longer see the dog as bad. And so we then begin to care about the dog. And the same is true in human relationships. We learn never, ever to push anyone or any situation out of our hearts. That's how we stay clear. It takes work. I am not saying there is a magic bullet to swallow. There is daily practice of quietness and release that each of us must do in order to feel that conditional love. Researchers say when we go there, we have a brain change. Something relaxes in us, and we can then feel this soul sadness for a whole situation, for ourselves, for the other person, for the world. That's when we learn compassion, and that's when we learn to give up making anyone or anything wrong. We just say it was a painful experience and grieve it. Risk being vulnerable, and be sure to go to someone else and say, is there anything that keeps us from being open-hearted with one another? When we do that, we are beyond our ego. We are in the spiritual place of our true, authentic nature. You know, Eleanor Roosevelt said this statement, nothing ever goes away until it teaches us what we need to know. So I had this experience in my life where I just dealt with these great laws. I encourage you in your own life to journal. It's part of a spiritual practice that you can do every day. Feel without a shadow of doubt the grace of God. Just wanting to surge through your life so that you feel the power of Spirit in you. And think about our affirmation this morning. Divine mind strengthening and revitalizing you. So every day you remember to experience your good. Mr. Fillmore said, I am a child of absolute good. Therefore, I expect the good, and good things happen to me. And I wish that for each of you. I wish that for this new community expressing as Unity Center DC, and I wish that for everyone on the planet.